They were called the Ghost Girls because they glowed in the dark like ethereal spirits, unaware that the shimmering dust on their skin was a death sentence, eating them alive from the inside out. In the wake of the First World War, radium was hailed as the miracle element, a substance so precious and powerful that it was marketed as a cure-all for everything from blindness to old age. At the United States Radium Corporation factory in New Jersey, hundreds of young women, some as young as 14, were hired for the prestigious job of painting watch dials with a revolutionary luminous paint called Undark. The work was delicate, requiring the girls to use fine camel hair brushes to apply the glowing paste to tiny numbers. But because the brushes would lose their shape after a few strokes, the supervisors taught the girls a specific technique: lip dip paint. They were instructed to use their lips and tongues to taper the brushes into a fine point, effectively swallowing a microscopic amount of pure radium with every single digit they painted, all while being assured by corporate chemists that the substance was perfectly harmless and that they were lucky to be working with such an expensive material. To these girls, including Grace Fryer and the Maggia sisters, the radium was a source of wonder. They would wear their finest dresses to work so they would glow in the dance halls at night, and they even painted their nails and teeth with the Undark paste to dazzle their suitors. What they didn't know was that radium is a bone seeker, a terrifying element that the human body mistakes for calcium, causing it to be absorbed directly into the skeletal structure, where it remains for a half-life of 1,600 years. While the girls felt fine for months, the radium was secretly bombarding their cells with alpha radiation, turning their own bones into microscopic machine guns that fired endless rounds of energy into their living tissue, slowly shattering the very foundations of their bodies while they slept, ate, and dreamed of their futures. By 1922, the miracle began to rot. Molly Maggia was the first to experience the nightmare when an aching tooth led to a dentist visit, only for her gums to refuse to heal and her jawbone to become so brittle that her dentist was able to lift her entire mandible out of her mouth with his bare hands. The horror spread like a contagion through the factory girls. Their spines crumbled under their own weight, their hips shattered during simple walks, and radium necrosis turned their faces into a landscape of weeping sores and honeycombed bone. When Molly died at the age of 24, the company's doctors, who knew the dangers of radium but protected their profits, bribed medical examiners to list her cause of death as syphilis, a cruel and calculated smear intended to ruin the girls' reputations so the public wouldn't look too closely at the glowing factory on the hill. Despite their agonizing pain and the massive medical bills, Grace Fryer and 5 other Radium Girls decided to sue the U.S. Radium Corporation in 1927, launching a legal battle that would become one of the most significant moments in labor history. By the time they reached the courtroom, the women were literally the living dead. They were so radioactive that a Geiger counter would click wildly just by being in the same room as them, and many were so frail they could barely lift their arms to take the oath. The corporation's lawyers used every delay and pray tactic in the book, hoping the girls would die before a verdict could be reached, but the Radium Girls refused to vanish into the shadows, pushing for a settlement that would finally acknowledge that their lives were worth more than the luminous dials they had painted with their own blood. The legacy of the Radium Girls lives on in every OSHA regulation and worker protection law we have today, but for the women themselves, the story has no happy ending. They were buried in lead-lined coffins to prevent their radioactive remains from leaching into the soil, but even now, nearly a century later, if you were to stand over their graves in New Jersey or Illinois with a Geiger counter, the earth would still scream with the energy of the element that killed them. They remain the glowing ghosts, eternal victims of a corporate machine that chose a few cents of profit over the lives of the women who quite literally gave their bodies to make the world shine. Their bones will continue to glow beneath the earth for another 1,000 years, a silent, radioactive testament to the true cost of corporate greed.